Okay, so let's carry on. So to develop your business continuity plan and your disaster recovery plan, you initiate the project, decide the scope, which is the area of the business it covers, and then you do a business impact analysis, which determines how important various activities are to the survival of the business, identify controls, make a recovery strategy, design your plan, implement it, train your people, and test it to make sure it works. And then you maintain the plan by updating it as things change. So, there we go. So here's your initiation milestone. You have a contingency planning policy. This is the business impact analysis that determines how much it would harm your business if different parts of it went down. Just a moment, I've lost my, there we are. Lost my monitoring there. All right. And then you determine controls to prevent bad things, ways to recover, a way to keep your IT working, and then, like I say, testing, training and exercises, and maintenance. So here's a diagram showing it. You develop the C-level managers, develop the policy statement, and then it tells you who does this, like to identify the controls as stakeholders and project managers and so on, and a little more detail in who handles the various steps here. C-level management must support it. Like everything you do in security, you can't really do anything significant to improve security without support from upper management, where you have the authority to allocate resources to this activity. And even if you don't have a disaster, the planning may increase your company efficiency because of the business impact analysis, where you correctly prioritize things. So you got a project manager who does not need to be highly technical, but the main skill is to have negotiation and people skills to make sure that the plan is completed and tested. You build your team, so you make a continuity planning team with all the stakeholders to figure out how all these parts of the business are going to be affected by disasters and how to cope with it. Then you decide what assets to protect. Then you assess the critical state. What would happen if this part of the business was out? How long could it be out without threatening the business? That's the business impact analysis. Determines the maximum tolerable downtime for all the various assets. And then you have a risk analysis. So here's an example. If your server room is unlocked, then you have a vulnerability. People may enter, and this may cause people to turn off the equipment or break it. So you should mitigate it by installing locks. That would reduce risk. Your software is out of date, similar one, no firewall, a similar arrangement. You can assess your various risks and plan mitigations. So here's your maximum tolerable downtime is related to other measures of time. The recovery point objective is how much data you recover after disaster. If you only back up once a week, then your backup might be a week out of date. So your recovery point objective is a week. You might have to redo a week worth of work. Your recovery time objective is how long it takes to recover the systems. And so the total amount of time to configure a recovered system is the recovery time objective plus the work recovery time, which is the work recovery time is how long it takes to configure the system. After you recover the system, like from backups, how long does it take to add configuration to it to bring it up to full functionality? And those two times together are your maximum tolerable downtime. This is the actual elapsed time it's going to take from a disaster to when you really have a functional system. Equipment comes rated with a mean time between failure, which estimates how often it'll break under normal conditions. The mean time to repair is an issue you might have with your vendors. And they've got various requirements, environmental and so on, connectivity requirements, so what temperature range it can handle, and so on. Supply chain is a big issue, especially these days. We're having a lot of supply chain problems. You might find that you cannot get the replacement parts you need, and that will foul up your recovery process. The communications may fail. So if phone lines are down, you can try using wireless networks, satellite phones. Some people even use ham radios for communication during disasters. And you got all these issues: heating, power, cooling, and water. All these things are required, and they all might go down. So you should have plans for what you're going to do if they go down. Now, your recovery strategy, if you have no plan at all, that is the cheapest, but it provides the least availability. If things fail, you just go down. If you have a cold site, that is relatively cheap, and it means equipment exists somewhere, but it'll take you a long time to get it going. A warm site and a hot site are more and more ready for business to just resume quickly, and the most perfect one is a redundant site where you have another entire site with all the operations running all the time and constantly synchronized, so it can just take over seamlessly when your original site fails. This is the most expensive recovery system, and it has the highest cost to implement, and it creates the highest degree of availability. Cloudflare, I know, has this. The CEO of Cloudflare talks about it. They have multiple redundant servers all over the world, and he will do things like test it by pulling out the plug to disconnect a whole data center. And he says if you're pinging one of the servers, you will only lose one ping. Within 1 second, it switches over to the next one, which is, high availability. Also very expensive. So that's all this is telling you. The redundant site is the most expensive, and then you have hot, warm, and cold. You might have a reciprocal agreement where you use somebody else's data center, some other partner company, and they have the right to use yours. That would be one way to have an alternative site you can use when your stuff goes down. You could have a mobile center, like something on wheels where you can drive into an area, or you can subscribe to a service that will outsource this. IBM offers one. And so here's various plans. Your business continuity plan sustains your business. The business resumption plan recovers it. The continuity operation plans provides an alternate site for 30 days. Here's your IT plan, your communications, your incident response, disaster recovery, and the occupant emergency plan. These are all the various plans in the BCP that we talked about before. So this will move to an alternate site. The recovery plan will move back to the original site. Continuity of support covers IT, and we've talked about incident response quite a bit, where you have a security incident. And occupant emergency protects the people, and crisis management coordinates the management. And so you have a crisis communication plan that might have call trees and so on to give people accurate information so you are not at the mercy of just rumors and guesses. And then you, of course, executive succession planning, which the military has, and you need that at your company too. What if one of the executives is unavailable or injured? Then who replaces them? All right. So you got D here. There we go. Well, we may have suffered a casualty. Perhaps not. Good. All right. So what value measures the maximum time needed to recover systems? That's the recovery time objective. All right. This is just the average time, mean time to recover. Recovery time objective is the maximum time. All right. Switch recovery option takes an hour to implement. That's a hot site. A redundant site is available instantly. All right, what process uses somebody else's data center? The reciprocal agreement, good. All right, and what plan protects human life? The occupant emergency plan, good. All right. There you go. All right, good. We got time to do the last one and finish up the chapter. So let's do that. So, backups. For continuous availability, maximum tolerable downtime is is getting shorter as people get more and more reliant on their systems. So if you want to really take it down to zero, you have continuous availability, where you have a redundant systems that can take over immediately. Hard copy data is an option sometimes, using paper records. I've seen people do that. Hospitals have done this during ransomware attacks. They go back to just writing everything down on paper. So a full backup is everything. The incremental and differential backup we talked about before. These are backups that only back up the data that has changed since the previous backup. You can rotate your tapes, first in, first out, where you have, say, 14 tapes, and you can have daily tapes, and then weekly tapes and monthly tapes. So you keep reusing these, and you keep some of the others for a longer period of time. That's the point you'll have this way with a relatively small number of tapes. You just keep rotating these and rotating those. You can reconstruct times in the past if necessary. If you say delete a file and you don't notice it for a whole month that you've deleted it, then you'll be glad you have these monthly tapes going back for a whole year. Electronic vaulting is another way to do it, where you send your data over the internet to back things up. It should, of course, be encrypted. Remote journaling saves database checkpoints. And database shadowing maintains two entire identical databases. So every time you perform a transaction, it performs an identical transaction on the other one. And now, of course, you can recover very quickly. If one fails, you've got another one already ready to go with all the data up to date in it. High availability clusters are active systems with all the systems working, and that's load balancing. The active passive systems only turn on the backup system when the active one is down. And then there's software escrow. If you buy software that's critical to your business, what if that company goes out of business? Then you might store the source code at a trusted third party, so you'll get access to the source code if necessary. All right, and so you got to test your plan. So there are various ways to do it. You can just read the plan to see if it looks good. You can do a read through where you list all the components and go make sure they're all available. You can do a tabletop walkthrough where you talk through all the steps and have people sort of role play the various positions, and this will help you find out if there are flaws. You can do a simulation test where you actually carry out the process. You can duplicate the business transactions on backup systems, or you can actually interrupt real business systems like I was describing at Cloudflare. You actually unplug the cable carrying real customer traffic during workday to see if your backup will kick in. That's, of course, the most extreme test, and if you can do that, you have the most high level of availability. You got to train your people, how to start the power, how to contact people, and of course, security awareness training is part of it for everyone, so they all know what they are supposed to do in this case. And you have to maintain your plan. Everything changes. The threats change, your business processes change, your locations, your personnel. So you have to consider also when you have changes in the network, your changes may affect the business continuity plan. So you should be aware those changes are being made and update the business continuity plan as necessary to cope with the changes. So here's mistakes. If the management doesn't support it or the staff doesn't support it, that's bad. If you don't cover enough of the business, if you don't think about the supply chain, which is a big issue. In the last 5 years, I've been hearing a lot of people with these supply chain attacks. If a lot of people don't test it or don't keep it up to date, and then you find it's not very useful. And there are frameworks, of course. There's the U.S. government NIST framework for business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning. There's an ISO standard, part of 27,000. There's an old British standard and a new one to supersede it, which is an ISO one. So there's a few frameworks. And there's one called BCI, Business Continuity Institute, with management and technical processes for business continuity. So those are a few frameworks that you may see. And we're down to the last Kahoot. All right. Okay, MTD 0. Yep, continuous availability means you cannot tolerate any downtime at all. Like Google, for example, servers all over the place that take over for each other, so there's no downtime. All right, 2 identical copies of a database. Yep, that's database shadowing. Good. All right, which is the most dangerous test? Obviously, business interruption. All right, and which one of these is not a common BCP error? All right, excessive testing, not likely. All right.